Okay. Okay. I hope my screen is visible to you guys.
Yeah, we can see.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
Not yet,
So,
Sumit. Not yet for me.
okay.
Yeah, I can now.
Perfect. Thanks. Okay. So, um, let's just I'll walk you guys through the agenda that we are planning, okay, and maybe the content and how we have structured the course. So what is something that we can expect along with the course, like what all modules we are going to learn, so we are clear of the path forward, and then we'll start with the technical stuff. Okay, so when we say wrap, right, we know one thing for sure, it's nothing but a restful ABAP programming model, right? What does it mean, or I can say what all thing it covers. Okay. So when I talk about a RESTful ABAP programming model, one thing is quite clear that it contains something. Let me just pick certain words from here. It's say REST. So it means it's nearby to our REST API. It talks something about a ABAP, and there is some sort of a programming model with which we would be doing something. So it means that uh, good thing, or I can say relief for an ABAPer, that they'll be learning something on top of what they already knew. Okay, so it means we'll be able to connect the dot easily. Plus, it says REST API. It means it gives them some sort of a hint that we are going to create some sort of a OData services which will be behaving, or I can say which will be performing some role of a server side thing. Right now, on top of it, we also call it as a some sort of a ABAP on cloud. Why we do that? Because when we say where are we going to do this particular development, right? So we are going to do this development, for example, right now on our BTP account connected to our ABAP environment, BTP account, and we'll utilize the okay. Plus, on top of it, when I say wrap, okay, I can say RESTful ABAP programming model. It ideally consists of multiple building blocks of it. Okay, so one thing maybe we would definitely be going through is something called CDS modeling. That's where comes into picture our VDM concept. So these are this many one of you would be knowing all the terms. Many one of you would have few terms which will seem as a jargons. So don't worry, we'll have the discussion, maybe understanding of them in brief, in detail as well. So I'll just say VDM is nothing but a virtual data model. Okay. So this is something we are also going to learn. Plus, when it comes to RAP, we are also going to learn one term very frequently called business object. Okay, so those of you who would have worked on, let's just say, all the other ways of generating any sort of a business object would have heard of something called BOF, right?
Hey Sumit,
So,
Satish here. Sorry to disturb you. Good morning.
hey, hi Satish, good morning. No problem. Thanks for joining. Okay, so this particular business object processing framework, that's what it would be much aligned with. So we'll see what are the similarities and differences it has. Okay, now after it, after we let's just say understood CDS, BOPF, now what we all should also be knowing is that this uh, considers these are considered as a building blocks of RAP. Okay, so this is something that we will make ourselves quite familiar with. Now, other than that, when it comes to RAP, okay, after we have understood all this thing, what we'll also be able to understand is that when it comes to RAP, it's a RESTful ABAP programming model using which I can generate an OData service, and that will ultimately hit us back into our mind saying, hey, can be different ways of generating OData service, right? Let's just say if I mention BOF, I can utilize BOF also somewhere. I can go with a gateway services. I can go with a CDS views. I can go with n number of different ways out of which I can generate OData service using ABAP or using non-ABAP as well. I can say some sort of a S4 HANA system or some sort of a SAP HANA XSS system as well. There are a number of ways I can do that. So what is so different when it comes to RAP? Okay, I can say this days you would have heard a term, generative AI, right? So definitely I cannot say these 100% generative AI, but the way RAP generates the skeleton of it, okay, gives you some glimpse of what a generative AI could be. Plus, they would have used something of that sort over here for sure. So I can say RAP comes up with a different kind of capabilities. Okay, and those capabilities allow us creating what? So as I say, it allows us creating some sort of a RESTful. It means some sort of a REST API, which is nothing but an OData service, which will be kind of, I can say, bit better. I can say some sort of auto generated plus generated in a direction so that we can focus on our actual business logic rather than much technicality when you are following, let's just say, any of the standard architecture. Okay, and that's where we talk about the ref flavors, and ref flavors ideally gives you a capability of generating an OData services and endpoint which will be consumed going forward by different consumers. Okay, so I'll just say consumers will be your maybe let's just say some sort of your Fiori application, or maybe let's just say some sort of your web APIs, right? So these are the parties which can use your let's just say final endpoint, and you let's just say by this flavor, if I say what this Fiori application will need as an OData service, if I would like to create a Fiori application, I'll need an OData service endpoint which can help me generate a read-only service, or maybe I would need something which can help me also generate some sort of a transactional service as well, right? So read-only services are something which should be quite straightforward, but we'll see how in the terms of business object, the data model can be also articulated. That's one. When it comes to transactional, you would have heard two more jargons called managed wrap and unmanaged wrap. I'll just give few more space over here. What is a managed rep? What is unmanaged rep? When to use what? That's something we are going to discuss in detail. Plus, I can say, let's just give a simple definition. Managed rep, you can simply say the question over here is what is, okay, I'll just simply add one more line over here. Yeah. So manage and unmanaged, this particular terminology is given based on one particular uh, underlying architecture's truth. What is that? I'll just say who is going to be responsible for implementation standard rep architecture. I can say standard REST API architecture. Let me just frame it in this way. When I say who is going to be responsible for implementation of a standard REST API architecture. Okay, now here comes the question, what is a REST API? Right? Because if I say standard REST API architecture, standard behavior, we should be knowing what it is, right? So it's simple. If I say I am talking about a REST API, I am talking about a one way of communication established via some sort of a HTTP protocol, okay, which will be allowing us performing any sort of operation on a set of a data. Okay. Now, if I say, hey, I would like to create some sort of a record, I'll just say simply create. In the term of REST API, I'll call it as a post. In terms of REST APIs, I'll say I would like to update something. I'll just simply say I would like to put something. If I say I would like to delete something, same goes over here. I'll just perform a delete operation. If I say I would like to, let's just say, read something, or I can say query something, I'll just say in the terms of a REST API, I would like to perform a read operation. Okay, we'll see in detail what are this particular thing, how the OData calls will be looking alike for this. But when it comes to a normal gateway services, if I would like to create a record, I have to go ahead and write the logic so that my data can be created in that particular relevant tables or a set of tables, right? Or same goes for the update, delete, and all the stuff. But over here, I say that if I'm talking about a managed app, my statement is who is going to be responsible for the implementation of a standard REST API architecture, standard REST API behaviors, which are this one. I'll say if SAP is going to take care of this particular standard REST API behavior architecture, then we call it as a managed app. If SAP is saying that you take care of, I can say relevant developer of the application is going to be responsible for this particular operation, which is nothing but your all the REST API operations, then I'll call it as an unmanaged app. Now, what do we understood? That whenever you choose to go with a managed app, SAP's generated code, generated skeleton will give you the uh, inbuilt functionality. So your normal CRUD operations are working out of the box. If you would like to add your own set of flavors, then definitely there are different ways. This managed rep can be also enhanced so that for few of the thing you would like your logic to get executed and you would like to take over the operations over here, called manage with unmanaged save. Or let's just say you would like to add some sort of more logic. So on top of the tables and on top of the entities that you are touching, you would like to let's just say operate on few more set of data. You will just simply say manage with additional save. Do not worry if you don't understand this terms in detail right now, because anyway we are going to have these things practically. I am just walk you through the things that we are going to cover. Okay. On top of it, definitely each of the application are different because they contain different business requirement. So it's not always about just the technicality of a REST API. The idea is who is also going to all implement the business logic over here. And that's always a responsibility of a developer in each and every application. Okay. And how a developer can do that? Developer will have a capability, will have a option of implementing n number of other things. Okay. So for example, I would like to, other than this particular standard HTTP protocol, I would like to create some custom actions saying post a particular document, or let's just say post the goods receipt, invoice, or let's just say inquire, or let's just say send for approval, anything. It could be anything. So any kind of such an operation like an action, or let's just say you would like to validate some sort of a data, you would like to determine X data based on a Y, right? So all those things are also going to be there, and that's something which definitely will be quite aligned with your business logic, right? Because each application will have different set of such an let's just say uh, actions, validation and determination set of things required. Plus there can be n number of other things, the role of a person who is performing that, whether he or she should be authorized to do that or not, and a number of other things as well. Those all the things falls into the category of business logic, which is going to be a developer's responsibility. So if I just go into quick flashback, I can say that in in RAP, or I can say in ABAP on cloud, what we are going to learn is what is a REST API. Let's just say ABAP is something that is going to be the backbone for this. ABAP on cloud will connect to BTP account, connect to that. And as we know that the RAP is ideally made up of few things. When I mention RAP building blocks, I'll say it's made out of a CDS modeling. It's made up of some sort of a behaviors, some sort of a implementation classes, some sort of a service definition, and some sort of a service binding. Okay, these are the things which your RAP application, any RAP application is built up of. Okay, and this is something that we are primarily going to focus on. Okay, I hope we guys are clear of like what are the things when it comes to just a single keyword RAP, what all thing it contains internally. Okay, this is what it is all about. Any doubts, anyone? Okay, perfect. Now let's just move one more step forward. Now when I say we are going to connect to this, right? Because we have to reach till ABAP. So always when let's just say when I use when I let's just say start learning any new technology, everywhere every time your one thing, or I can say one question, one point will be around your mind is, okay, hey, by let's just say my past experience, I am an ABAPer by blood. Okay, so if I say I would like to learn something, just tell me in a simple word where my ABAP is going to touch. Once you can tell me where my ABAP is going to get started, I'll be able to do those things easily. Okay, now I'll tell you where. So for that, we'll be understanding a BTP, okay, business technology platform. So let me just open this thing simply for you first. So there is something called business technology platform. Okay, we all have heard about that, I guess, from quite a long time. SAP is marketing this, and maybe it seems BTP is going to play a big role going forward. BTP is going to be the only entry point for any SAP system that we are going to work with. Okay, now, as we are talking about a BTP, business technology platform, let's just understand a BTP in a layman term. Okay, I mean, it would seem a bit of a theory, but my understanding is, let's just say, if we know the in and out, the basics, the purpose of having anything anywhere, wherever we are going to use it, it would be easy for us to connect the dots. Okay, and yeah, maybe going forward after the first session, I'll anyway ask, in case you feel there is some sort of let's just say methodology you would like to change, I guess we can also discuss. That's not an issue. I'm just trying to make the things simple, and maybe simplify it in the and maybe convert it into a layman term. I'll just say BTP. I'll just say, what is a BTP? Business technology platform. When I say business technology platform, when I say business technology platform or BTP, right? I'll just simply say BTP over here is going to be one platform where SAP's technology relevant, all the business processes can be, let's just say, achieved, subscribed for, or let's just say can be requested, or let's just say can be started, okay, whenever we want. So that's why it is a single entry point for all the business processes. Okay, now we would have heard that maybe this BTP is kind of SAP's offering towards the cloud technology. And here we would also have heard that SAP, when it comes to cloud technology, are also providing me two kind of offering, a public cloud and private cloud. So what is a public cloud? What is private cloud? Okay, and what are the similarities and differences of it when it comes to a so-called on-premise system on which we have spent so many years working on that, right? So we definitely would like to know what are the things those are going to change. Now, when it says public cloud, okay, one thing is for sure, this is something which is public. It means there is something which not only I as a customer am going to use, but there can be n number of customers who would be utilizing that. Correct. And that's where public cloud simply means that all the business processes given in the form of a shared services. So for example, I'll simply say, hey, I would like to use my process. Okay, business process which where I would like to create, let's just say, my purchase order, for example, right? So when I say I would like to use, or I can say create my purchase order, there can be application, for example, manage purchase order, right? Now in this particular case, this particular manage purchase order application, my expectation will be that I will be able to manage the purchase orders which I am creating in my organization. Okay, so it means that if I'm creating a purchase order, the data is also quite sensitive to me. No one other than me should be able to view that. The purchase order which I create, I should also be able to put some sort of a role restriction saying, hey, this is relevant to, let's just say, a so and so project. So anyone, even though they are in my organization, if they are not belonging, or I can say part of that particular project, I don't want them to view that particular purchase orders, because there can be certain information whose confidentiality clause changes based on the context. Okay, So in that case, I'll say I would like to have some application which SAP would have published onto a public cloud, but that the fact is I may not be the only person who would be using that, but n number of person on in my organization would be using that. But that's something you are thinking from a one customer's perspective. When it comes to public cloud, it means it's a public. It means there can be a huge amount of space, huge amount of, let's just say, capability already given, and there can be a customer number C1, customer number C2, and n number of customer using those particular service, the one which SAP has provided. As it is a public one, it means the same application instance will be used by different customers. But there definitely will be a set of a security which will be applied so that your data is quite secure in a way no one other than the person who is a creator or no one other than the organization will be able to view that. Plus, additional security can also be applied. So within the organization, data can also be made secure. Okay, but when it comes to restriction, you are thinking of one application. Does that mean that I can go ahead and let just say, hey, there is a managed purchase order application. I would like to add one more tab into a particular application and maybe start showing XYZ number of information because I think it would be helpful for my customer, right? So it means there is an application, okay, whose let's just say layout is something of this sort, and it has got some sort of a list over here, and I would like to start showing two more columns over here so that this information are visible to my end user. Now the question is, if you manipulate something over here, will it be visible only to you? Not really, right? It will be visible to n number of other people. It means when it comes to public cloud, one thing is for sure that you will be able to utilize all the business processes. It would be like kind of a shared. So definitely costing wise, it will be also quite effective. But when it comes to, let's just say, extensibility, that would be a bit limited because SAP want to ensure that the thing, the functionality, the procedures that they have given is quite uniform across multiple customers. Okay, and that's the reason in the public cloud you will ideally see, or I can say would hear the term call, let's just say the extensibility is limited in a way that maybe you can do some sort of a customization and very limited thing, but those open thing that you used to do here and there in on-premise system, that's quite limited. If you would like to go with that flavor, what you can go ahead with is go with a private cloud. Okay, why is that the case? Because when it comes to private cloud, the idea is that, okay, let's just understand the term on-premise first. Why it is called on-premise? Because it's on my in my doorstep. So for example, let's just consider that there is my server room over here. Now the role has changed. So there is my server room into which I have got all the servers and XYZ thing which I would need in order for my SAP system to work. Okay. Once I have the server room, who is the owner of this? Me, customer C1. And any things which I do over here will be only impacting to me. No one else other than myself will be able to view that first. Second, any functionality I would like to add, I'll do that. Okay, and I'll have a dedicated SAP basis team for that. Okay, this is what we can call it as an on-premise. Now, when it comes to private cloud, the similarity over here is that it's definitely won't be a small server room like you, but there will be a huge server room like this one, for example. Just consider it visually. Maybe it's a bigger server room. That's just what I would like to just indicate over here. So it's something that not only customer C1 has published. There can be some, let's just say, big money man. I can say some sort of a person who is providing such a service would have invested lots of time, money, energy, and maybe lots of hardwares and everything they would have, let's just say, procured to create such a server room. In this server room, there can be n number of, let's just say, hardware, which consists of, let's just say, some sort of a hard disk, memory, network drives, and so forth. Many things, network cables and RAM and whatever you can think of, all those things. Okay. So this particular thing which they have prepared, I can call it as a, let's just say, infrastructure. So there is a huge infrastructure someone has someone has invested for, and there can be some providers. You would have heard the big name already. I'll just say Google Cloud, right? There can be, let's just say, Microsoft Azure or Amazon. There can be n number of such a service providers which would have procured this particular servers, and now out of which, when you say, hey, I would like to subscribe for something, they'll say, what is your sorry something. Okay. So when you say I would like to subscribe for it, for example, for let's just say 100 GB of a hard disk and some sort of a memory and everything, they'll say, okay, I'll rent you. I can say I'll give you this particular area which will be responsible for your particular applications development, all your servers and everything which you used to capture over here. You can put it over here. It means I'm giving you a hard disk, I'm giving you memory, I'm giving you network. If you only want this particular capability, I'll give you all this. Ultimately, you are getting something. You are not investing into a physical hardware. Instead, you are subscribing for that. Okay. But you are just subscribing for hardware. You are just subscribing for infrastructure. It means you are getting infrastructure as a service. Right. Now, when it comes to a private cloud, in terms of any sort of offering, in an I can say in a generic term, that's what it means. It means something as a service. Okay, anything that you get as a service, be it, let's just say, some sort of infrastructure or some sort of a platform as well. So for example, I'm getting a SAP platform itself where I can perform, let's just say, I can have some business user who can start utilizing the standard services which are provided. Okay, or I can also have some sort of applications which I might also um, plan to develop. So I can have some sort of a developers as well. Okay. Now this particular developers might be interested in developing certain sort of application which might need some platform which will give them the development environment up and ready. For example, for an ABAP, I would need some developers SDK, the required operating system patches and everything that they want. It means I can have some sort of a platform. Or let's just say if I say business user, there can be some sort of a software or an application which I would need in order for me to start utilizing those softwares or application and start working on my business processes directly. Could be possible, right? So anything as a service, when you would like to just subscribe for it and now treat is as if it's your own set of a particular property, and you will start paying for that, but you will not concern about this particular maintenance of a server room and any other updates, patch fixes, anything that comes into picture. Okay, then it's called as a private cloud. Okay, now the similarity of it will be with the private cloud and the on-premises system will be that, like we have openness in the on-premise system, same set of openness you will get in the private cloud. Even if it's a private cloud, you will feel as if you are working on an on-premise system, just that rather than keeping and renting a room where you are ultimately having your own server and maintaining all the hardware, there is someone who is doing all these things for you. That's what a private cloud means. Okay. Now, while we are thinking about this private cloud and while we are thinking about this public cloud, the similarity over here is that in both the cases, it's not definitely you who is hosting those particular hardwares and the networks and the servers on your doorstep. Instead, there is someone called as a provider, called as a service provider, who is maintaining these things for you. So if you say private, definitely they'll be dedicating a space, dedicating an area and dedicating a software service license instance to you, which you will be owning and no one else will be able to look at it. Okay. Other than patch and everything which SAP will be providing, they'll definitely keep on updating your softwares, and any new upgrade which come up, SAP will take care of it. But the idea is that when it comes to security perspective, definitely public cloud is also utmost secure, but the openness, the extensibility that you will get will definitely quite on the higher side. Now, when it comes to provider, I mentioned there can be certain providers, but does that mean that, hey, Google is saying my headquarter is on XYZ region, I'll just publish my services over there? If I say Google is saying, hey, my headquarter is in US, I'll just only provide, I can say I'll have my server room nearby, so it's easy for me to maintain. Not really, right? They can invest somewhere else as well. So maybe consider that they have a huge server room over here, and they have another huge server room, for example, maybe in Singapore, for example, right? That's quite possible. So if there is one more server room over here, so likewise, they each one of them can have different areas, different regions in which they would have hosted their server rooms. And this server rooms over here will ultimately have those live services which will have all your required thing in order for a system to be established. Okay. When it comes to a consumer, what a consumer will look into. Consumer will simply say, hey, I would like to get some service. I don't want to host the thing on my doorstep. I'll say, hey, I would like to get the services from Google Cloud. So I choose my provider. Then I'll say, hey, they are providing services in Singapore, and they are also providing services in, let's just say, US as well. So which one is nearby to me? Because when it comes to communication, definitely these days infrastructure are quite efficient that you will see much less latency, but there is still, I can say that's also one of the criteria that we'll look into when we have finalized a provider. While finalizing the provider, we might see also multiple things, saying what are services they are providing, what is their costing and everything. Correct. But these are the things definitely that will come into picture when you are opting for any of the providers and the let's just say region onto which they have hosted those servers. This combination over here, using which you choose who is going to be your provider, build your so-called SAP system. An SAP system in your BTP sub account is termed as your sub account. Okay, so for example, if I say I'm going into my BTP account over here and I'll say that I would like to now work on a cloud environment. I don't want to work on a let's just say on premise, because I might end up having that overhead of maintaining all those things. So I'll say, okay, then how many systems you want? So I'll just say I would like to have one development system. I would like to have one quality system and production system, for example, right? So in terms of SAP GUI, what you would have done, you would have created three clients, three SAP clients, one for development, quality, and production. In terms of a BTP, what you will do is you will create a sub account. So why it's called sub account? Because there is a global account for your organization, and within this global account, you will create multiple sub account. It's as good as you have an organization whose SAP system is there. This terms as your global account. Afterwards, in this particular SAP system, you want different system landscape that's termed as your sub account. So if I just go over here, you will see a multiple sub account. So you will, whenever you create your trial account for the very first time, what you will get is you will get a set of a single sub account by default created, where you would have certain thing. You can also go ahead and create your sub account in your real project environment. You will start from zero. I'll just simply say I would like to create, for example, some sort of a dev sub account. Then you will say, hey, I would like to, I'll need some provider, right? So you, what you will do is you will just select over here. As there is a trial, you will see only two. But in the real one, you will have n number of providers out of which you can choose. You can choose what all services then provide. Okay, what will be the criteria? How will I choose? Okay, which service provider to choose also from? That's something which is also a good discussion. Maybe we can also spend some time on that. But I'll say if I am selecting a particular person, an organization, a provider who is going to provide me the service, there can be some provider plus the region onto which they would have hosted their services. Amazon Web Service has US East, Microsoft Azure has Singapore. On top of it, each service provider, okay, each service provider provides a n number of services, right? So for example, if I consider, let's just say two e-commerce site, for example. For example, consider as a Amazon and Flipkart, for example, right? They would have their own set of, let's just say, marketplace, some sort of a catalog from where I'll say, hey, these are the services which I am providing. Amazon will offer their services. Flipkart will offer their services. Then I can choose, okay, where to pick anything from. Let's just consider the example which we understand these days quite easily. Let's just say I would like to subscribe for some sort of Amazon Prime, and I would like to subscribe for Netflix. Then I'll say which all web series, which all media, entertainment media that individual is providing to me, and which are fitting my requirement, what are their subscription charges. Based on that, I'll choose which particular platform to subscribe for, isn't it? That's the same thing, that's the same story which happens over here. So for example, when you will create one account with AWS, one account with Singapore, let's just say Microsoft Azure, you will get the service in this sub account depending on what are the services which AWS is providing. When you subscribe for this one, you will get the services which this sub account is providing. Yeah, definitely there can be some native services which individual providers are providing. There can be some generic service which each sub account will have. For example, SAP is relevant development services, right? So definitely SAP is responsible for that. As you can see, we are into SAP environment and different providers are providing. It means SAP has a close tie-up with them. They are using this particular platform just to pick the infrastructure, just to have the physical hosting of the services. But when it comes to internal service, SAP is liable. SAP is responsible for us to provide this particular services. Okay, so it does not mean you are directly communicating with AWS. The idea is you are using and choosing which provider you would like to work with, but the agent, or I can say the person with which you would have all the terms and everything agreed upon, will be SAP. Okay, so all out of whole infrastructure that you would have, let's just say SAP would have purchased, this particular thing that gets created is called a platform. So there is a platform as a service. You are getting a platform into which, if you just go, you will get n number of services which are being offered. So if I just go in service marketplace over here in my sub account, you will see all the different kind of services they provide. Okay, and here comes, let's just say, different kind of solutions, be it, let's just say, some artificial intelligence, some application development, some data and analytics integration, and number of services. Okay, for example, if I say I would like to search for some web service, I can also search for that and maybe can start working on that. At the same point in time, for example, if I would like to work with some build application, I can also go ahead and work with that. Each of them falls into a different categories, but these categories of service are kind of combined under this particular individual sub account that you will get. Okay, out of which the service that we are mainly going to work in detail into is called a web service. But yeah, it makes sense for us to understand the background of it. Okay, why actually we are going via the BTP and why we are not directly jumping onto my ABAP, right? I could have started with an ABAP if I would like to understand the RAP. There is no difference in that. Okay. 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 I think. Okay. Is the issue with everyone? No one is able to see the screen. I'll reshare. No worries. I just unshared the screen. Now I'll reshare. Okay. I hope it's visible.
No, Sumit, it's not
Yeah.
visible.
Yeah,
For me, it's not visible, Sumit.
I think
Okay.
I was
Maybe
able
there
to see it.
is.
Yeah, I
Maybe I
was able
guess.
to see it earlier
I
as
can
well,
see.
and
Then
I can
I
see it
just.
now.
Yeah. I just unshared. Maybe I guess it minute back, and now I have shared. So I hope everyone is able to see the screen now.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Sumit.
And I hope it was not stuck for everyone.
Uh, Still now, it's not showing.
No, no,
Okay,
it's
I will
I.
just
No, no, wait. You will be able
view.
to see the team screen. Now I am on the Excel.
Yeah, actually, that Excel is open. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Can you
that's
see my
correct.
cursor moving?
Yeah, yeah, we do. Yeah.
So maybe Kaustubh, there is some issue with your network connection. Maybe you can just have a look.
Okay, I will just reconnect to.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, thanks. Okay. So I hope the screen was not stuck for you guys as well, right? In between, you were able to follow correctly.
Yeah. Yes.
for it. Okay, yeah, thanks. Okay, so out of this service, the one which we are able to, which we'll be following will be our ABAP service. Now, when it comes to those audience as well, or those guys who may not have cloud implemented on their system immediately, but they might be having the latest on-premise system, will also be able to follow the things that we are going to create and understand over here on our cloud system. The same thing can also be tried out on your on-premise system as well. For that, your S/4HANA on-premise system should be somewhere greater than or equal to 2022. Anything latest will be fine, but it should be, I mean, SAP says that maybe you will get it from a bit earlier, but the stable versions of it, okay, maybe stable libraries, it would be good if you have something over and above 2022. Okay, now I would like to connect to my ABAP environment. Let's just understand that. Now, when I'm connecting to my ABAP environment, I'll just simply go ahead and create, because there is a service marketplace. As there is a service marketplace, I'll choose which service I would like to go for, right? So for example, I'm interested in ABAP. I'll just simply go ahead and create a instance over here. The moment you go over here, you will get an ABAP instance and you will simply say, hey, I would like to create a XYZ ABAP instance over here. The moment you go next, I'm not sure whether it will allow me to. Yeah, now it does, but ultimately at the end, it will fail for me. I'll tell you why, but for you, it won't, don't worry. So when I say I would like to create an ABAP environment instance, which I'll be choosing for my development, as it says that this is a shared plan because I'm on the public cloud, and this is something which will be also shared across multiple users who are using my sub account. The runtime environment it will be working on will be the Cloud Foundry. There can be different runtime environment. Okay. Now, when I say I am going with a XYZ as a name over here, you will be prompted for a mail ID. You have to add a mail ID of yours over here. You have to add a mail ID of yours. The moment you add your mail ID over here, it will be considered as the mail ID which you will be using going forward while connecting to the relevant ABAP environment. That's the idea. Okay, so how you will do that? You will create an instance, go over here, add your mail ID and just say next and create. That's all. Your ABAP environment will be created. Once you have done that, you will go in your instances and you will see whether your services, the one ABAP environment service that you just subscribed for, you created an instance for is there or not. So you will see a ABAP environment. So I just named it as ABAP environment. You can name it as anything. And there is a service you will see ABAP environment services. You will just open this and over here you will see that there are no service keys. I mean, for me it is because I created one, but you won't see any service key over here. It will be quite empty. What you will do is you will click on create and you will just simply say service key name, for example, D2, and just simply say create. Okay. It will say creation in progress and it will create a service key. Now, why a service key is required? Okay. Now, service key is required because as we mentioned, there is a service which will be used by cloud users. It means system should be able to recognize what are the objects that you are developing and what are those individual activities that individual is performing. Okay, and for that it needs some sort of identity of that particular end user. Okay, and that's where the service key comes into picture. So some sort of authorization will be there. I'll just click on this and I'll just view this, and this contains my overall authorization thing. So it says this is a URI onto which my sub account is connected to, and ultimately the endpoint finally which on your ABAP is hosted. So this is where your ABAP is hosted. It's called abap.us10. So there can be this particular endpoint onto which your all the relevant ABAP libraries are hosted. So if someday or let's just say any point in time there is some issue in this library, definitely you will see that your ABAP is becoming unstable. It's very unlikely to happen that, but if that happens, this is the endpoint which is responsible for that. Plus, as I mentioned, individual system should be able to identifiable. The system should be recognizable. So the identity zone is given over here, which also combine your client ID and client secret for individual user. And this particular verification key will be used for your authentication purpose. That's how it works. Okay. Now, if I just simply close this, now my next step is that I would like to start utilizing this ABAP account for my actual applications development perspective. I'll just simply go over here and I'll download the service key. Okay. And you would be able to connect to that. So for example, I'll just simply say, hey, I download this. and you will get a service queue over here. And then you will say, I would like to connect to this. Okay. So for example, I'll just cancel this for now. And once you have done that, you will just simply say new. Okay. Okay. Let me just tell you what it is. So this is your ADT. ADT is nothing. Okay. I'll just say this is nothing but your Eclipse. What all thing will you need if you don't have the development environment ready? You will need a Eclipse. Okay. For you to even install and maybe have your Eclipse up and ready, you would need one more thing ready in your system called JDK, Java Development Toolkit. Definitely, we are not going to install anything on terms of Java, but Eclipse is not specific to ABAP, isn't it? It's a generalized tool. It's a generalized SDK which will be ultimately used for different kind of development. It does not only understand ABAP; it understands n number of different business languages. So JDK over here is the one that will be prerequisite for you. You will also need an Eclipse for you. Once you have done that, you will be able to open Eclipse. Okay, once you have the Eclipse with you, next thing you will do is you will install. Okay, I'll just say this category is download and install. Is also download and install, and I'll just say install as a plugin. What is that? You will add ADT as a plugin. That's something we are going to install. You will just simply go over here. The moment you open your ADT for the very first time, you will just simply say help install new software over here. Okay, once you have done that, you will ultimately see a particular dialog coming up, and here you will simply add that, and here you will simply add the path. Okay, so you can simply search for it onto the Google, or maybe it's called as a tools.hana.ondemand. So it's a HANA tool, and that's something will give you the ADT tool as well, ABAP development tools. Why we call it as a ADT? Because they are ABAP development tools. Then you will say, okay, I'll need all this particular softwares. You will just select this, say next, next, and finish, and you will see an ABAP getting installed for you. Okay. Before that, you won't be able to connect to your ABAP cloud. So ADT is one of the important thing. I'll just simply say that you might also need this particular plugin available at this particular path. Okay, this is something you will also need. Once you have done that, fourth step for you will be you will just switch this environment to ABAP. Why? Because as I mentioned, this is Eclipse, which is meant for different kind of development. It's not always meant for ABAP, right? We have to switch to the plugin that we just installed. So you will go over here once it has been installed. If it is installing, you will say software being installed percentage and everything. Then you have to restart once it has been installed. Then you will be able to go in Windows perspective, open perspective, and here you will go over here and say ABAP. So this ABAP perspective is something that you will select and say open. Currently, I am into ABAP perspective already, so I won't need that. But you see, it has got multiple languages already. That's the reason you are supposed to do that explicitly that, okay, I would like to do this particular activity over here. Okay. Once you have done that, then only you will be able to see this option ABAP project and ABAP cloud. If you are in a different perspective other than ABAP, you won't see this option. Then you will say ABAP cloud project, and you will ultimately say SAP BTP environment, and you will use the service key that we created. I'll just go over here, just say next over here, and you will see a D2, for example, over here. Right, the moment you open this, it will open this over here. I'll just simply say next. Okay, and then you have to log in. Now, in order for you to log in, there are two ways. Either you copy the URL and just simply log in any browser you want, or just say open it in a default browser. So it will validate whether you are a valid user or not. So I'll just say open logon page in a browser. But you remember we have added a mail ID when we created a ABAP instance. That's the same account that it asks you for login. I'll just simply say open logon. It will navigate me over here. And I'll just simply say continue. I'll just add the password. It's trying to validate whether you have that service available, and says, yeah, you have the service and I have logged you in. Service instance currently unavailable. It could very well be possible. So I have anyway connected this instance. Let's see if the service is unavailable, because it's a public cloud. So it's very well possible if SAP is trying to, let's just say, did something. Yeah, there is some issue. So what's happening is, if I just go over here, we can very well validate it from here as well. If you just click on this ABAP environment, yeah. So maybe that particular service is down, maybe for upgrade something. No worries. Okay, that's the reason maybe we were not able to find that particular thing running, and that's the reason maybe we were not able to connect. But that's the step that we ideally perform, and we'll have the system up and running like this. That's how we ideally do it. Okay. So okay, before we proceed on to the next concept, maybe we don't have the system available, but there are few things which I mentioned that will be prerequisite for you to understand RAP. Okay, and that's something we'll spend some time on to, which is nothing but your some sort of a VDM concept. So one very important thing, because we'll need this thing as a first step, and then maybe a bit of a business object and REST API. But before that, I see few questions onto the chat, and maybe if there is any question other than that, maybe feel free to unmute and ask. Okay. Okay. So screen sharing. Okay, that's something I guess that should have been resolved. Can you give me a real-time example of use cases of manage and unmanaged? Yeah. Okay. Maybe we can discuss that. So the idea is that when it comes to manage and unmanaged, okay, let's just consider a simplest thing. When you say that you would like to take the responsibility of handling the standard REST API architecture, why would you do that? When I say when you would like to create something, but when, okay, technically saying a REST API or an OData service, when I say I would like to create something. So for example, I'll just simply say create a purchase order, correct? Now, when I say I would like to create a purchase order, what does it mean? It means that there will be some table, for example, EKQ, and I'll be loading some data onto that, right? I'll be saying there will be some PO number, there can be some company code, there can be some X number of other information as well, which we would be storing over here, correct? Now, when you say I would like to create a purchase order, okay, so out of, let's just say, this particular information that you would have, you would create this information, but there can be n number of other things also going on into the background, isn't it? Right. It means on top of the purchase order creation, when you create a purchase order, it might also update something on your material stock. It might also add some sort of other information on, let's just say, what is a planned delivery and everything. There can be a number of other business document, other, technically saying, forget about business document, there can be a number of different other tables which might also get updated, would get new entries, or some sort of a manipulation could be there from a data perspective. How this would be happening? Because of some sort of a business logic, correct? Now, when, if I say I'm creating an application for that, no business logic exists. Okay, no existing business logic is there. Instead, I will be gathering the requirement from my end user. I will be writing the logic from the scratch. I'll say, hey, when I create a purchase order, what all things should happen in background? My end user will say that, okay, when you are creating a purchase order, ideally we also intimate my person who requested for that. For example, a PR document, I'll also update my purchase requisition. At the same point in time, if I say material stock, I'll also add certain thing into the forecasting, saying I'm also going to get some more stock of this particular material and XYZ stuff. Okay, so what you will do is you will say, okay, I'll write the business logic, but creation of an entry over here will be done here itself, plus creation of entry over here. If I'm going with a manage, let's just visualize you are going with a manage rep approach. If you're going with a manage rep, you will say the moment someone do that, an entry should be created onto this table. I'll just Consider that my wrap is doing this. Okay, by I'll just say will be handled by framework if I'm going with a wrap, a managed approach. Plus, if I say that other than this, some sort of a PR document should be updated. Finally, when you save this particular purchase order, I'll just say on save, my PR should be updated. On my save, some sort of a material stock should also be altered. Correct. So all these things you will write one by one, and all these things you will prepare. Correct. And you will ultimately add some sort of a determination for this. And you will also say what these are the things which should be done and what are the things which should not be possible. You will write an validation for that, and you will ensure that whole business logic is written. But for that, all those things which are available by default, like what all things should be read only, what are the things which should be mandatory, and all framework will handle it. Framework will handle the CRUD operation as well, which are linked to the direct table. But the indirect tables and everything, you will write the logic of it in the form of some sort of a determination and validation. But consider that you are developing an application for which when you ask your end user saying, I would like to create a purchase order, I would like to create an application which can create a purchase order for you. What will you, they'll answer will be that, okay, there is an SAP GUI application available. There is an another application available. Whatever they are doing, you can do that. It means for them, it's an application, but for a developer, there can be some BAPI which can exist. There can be some API class which exists. It means there can be some business logic exist in the form of some sort of function or some sort of a utility method, something. And this utility method or function would have been developed over course of years. So should I re-study this logic and rewrite whole thing again? Does not make sense really, right? Or let's just say if tomorrow there is some update in this business logic, I have to keep myself updated to understand if there is some change being done. If I'm replicating this logic old into my new logic just to go with a managed rep, I have to again update this on my own, isn't it? So I'm having some double business logic written over here. At that point in time, what you will do is you will just say, I'll go with an unmanaged rep. What idea over here is that rather than framework creating the entry for you, they'll just give you a method. Create method over here, they'll give you, and you will just simply call those utilities saying on creation, what should happen? On creation, what should happen? You will choose that, and that particular relevant BAPI or utility method, you will call that. Okay. The advantage over here is that the business logic, even you don't know 100% business logic, how it has been written. But as it has already been written, you will utilize it. So you are not concerned about what are the underlying table it update, what are the tables it creates an entry, what are the document it posts into the background. The moment you utilize this particular unmanaged rep, definitely you will be responsible for your create, update, delete, and XYZ other operations. But the idea is that your business logic is something that you can reutilize. So if you see over here, the idea is in manage, developer is going to take care of the business logic only. But in unmanaged, business logic is something which exists somewhere. It's a developer's responsibility to plug the existing business logic, I can say, to plug the existing business logic rather than rewriting it. And while doing that, you are losing something which is quite straightforward in compared to that business logic, which is nothing but your REST API architecture. That's something you can just write the logic for, saying if I have existing functions, which one should be called on create, which one should be called on let's just say update, and during the save, what all things should be called. Okay, so that's something you will ultimately be deciding. So when I say what are the criterias when it comes to choosing manage or unmanaged, if the business logic already exists, rather than let's just say rewriting it, doing a re-engineering rather than reinventing the wheel, you will go with an unmanaged so that you can utilize those business logic which already exists. But if that's something which is new, which you are implementing or called as a greenfield implementation, then you will go with a manage, or this brownfield will be nothing but this unmanaged will be nothing but a brownfield implementation for you. So any standard application or I can say any application, doesn't mean standard. Okay, many a time what happens is you yourself would have developed some application in your organization. Now they are saying please move on to RAP. But while developing those applications, you would have used gateway, you would have used some CDS based OData service, you would have created it via some report, and number of different alternatives could be there. You would have created certain utilities, or you would have written logic. You can easily push them into utility, and then you can utilize those over here. So the centralized logic works in different applications, exposed in the different forms. That's the idea. Make sense? Yes, no. Okay, let's just have a quick discussion.
Yes, got it.
Yeah, thanks. Anything else? Maybe anyone is not clear about, anyone having any doubt or anything? Okay, fine. Okay, in case you guys have any doubt, feel free to ask. Okay, that should be fine. Okay, so I know maybe I guess this ADT has been down. Let's see, I guess we'll try it for one more time in case we can just open this. Is this particular, they would have some updates planned, so that's the reason maybe they brought it down. No worries. So there is one more concept we'll learn, and maybe I guess I won't, let's just overload you guys with too much of theory, but there is one thing which is quite important even before we anyway start with the let's just wrap
One
block. Okay.
question.
Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, now as you're like facing the issue in the because it's a public cloud, right? So in generally in the projects it is public or it'll be a kind of private.
So in general project, I can say it totally depends on the customer. Okay, so in customers landscape, what happens is there is a public cloud because we have a trial account. But in case of a customer, what happens is they'll have their own use cases. So what happens is during your sales or pre-sales, guys will ultimately gather the requirement. While gathering the requirement, they'll understand whether they are satisfied with the standard processes which SAP has come up with, and few limited side-by-side extension, which is nothing but your few custom application can fulfill the requirement. Then the idea is they'll definitely try to sell public cloud. But let's just say if your customers' business processes are not exactly fitting into the standard business processes which has been given, then you might end up modifying certain processes, doing n number of extensions and everything, which are not possible in public cloud. And that's the reason private cloud is something that they'll opt for. So totally depends on the business process that your customer is born in. Now, what I have seen is many a time, or I can say in this recent days, public cloud is kind of bit cost effective compared to that of the private cloud, because here you are getting a shared space. So many a time, just for the customer to go to the cloud environment, they might opt for a public cloud. And in future, if their business processes are deviating a bit, they might opt for a migration to private cloud as well, which will be quite easy because ultimately they are already on one cloud instance, and SAP standard services are available using which they can easily convert their services from public to private. That's also option. But the criteria based on which they'll opt for public or private is how their business processes are, whether they are well aligned with the standard business processes which SAP has provided, or they want modification in an existing process. If they want a new process altogether for which there is nothing available, anything is fine, because by the side-by-side extensibility, you can create your own application, deploy it, and that's also possible in public cloud. But when it comes to modifying a process, which is not possible because the instance is being used by multiple customers. Okay.
Okay.
So it's as good as if I say that I don't want two more things, but I don't want these things at all. So if you are willing to hide, let's just say few of the options altogether, and you will hide it for yourself, but the idea is how about the other end users, because it's a public instance. You see, you will get as if you are getting using this application alone, but that's not the fact, isn't it? That's the reason you have to be quite cautious while choosing whether the customer is going with public cloud or private cloud. Okay, thanks. Okay, now one thing we'll spend some time, and maybe we'll give back you your weekend over here, is the RAP concepts first building block, which is nothing but a VDM. You would be knowing that, or maybe those who don't know, this is something which is a base. We will need it definitely for any of our application development we do. Okay. So we know this is what we are talking about, that whole RAP application is built with the help of a CDS data modeling. Okay, so we'll go from bottom to top. Any application over here in RAP contains this building block, some sort of a CDS data modeling, then some sort of a behaviors and ABAP implementation. I can say ABAP behavior implementation, you will just visualize it as your class, some sort of a ABAP class you would be implementing. Then you would ultimately have the things which are developed, defined. You will say, okay, what are the things which I'll need for dedicated this application? And that's where you will project the information. That's why it is called projection. That out of 1,000 things which are there, for now, my end user services which I'm going to publish, what all thing I would like to define. So you will define the scope of it by projecting relevant to views, by projecting relevant to properties, by projecting relevant services. So for example, if I say I have created the logic so that create, update, delete, all the services can be granted. But for now, my update, or let's just say my delete, is under some enrichment. I don't want delete service to be public. Okay, so in that case, in your behavior, only you will project your create and update. It means you are having a projection layer. Till the time the things are not in projection, they won't be public. As simple as that. Afterward, you will have a service definition, scope, and all the things. Now, the thing which I am talking about right now is this CDS data modeling. Okay, so CDS data modeling is a quite important thing when it comes to a RAP application development. So let's just understand that. Okay, so I'll just simply say, if I have a CDS data model which I am willing to create, the CDS data model which I am willing to create, then I would have n number of fact. Okay, so one thing is quite clear. I hope you guys are also now quite, let's just say with me, saying the purpose of RAP is definitely to give some sort of a services onto cloud, but in nutshell, it's giving some sort of a REST API service. Definitely we'll consume this REST API for Fiori application, but in a nutshell, in a single line, if someone asks what a RAP does, okay, so I'll just simply say RAP generates some backend services in the form of either an OData or a web API, anything which will be consumed, but in a nutshell, it is a server side thing, right? Now, when I say it's a server side thing, it generates such particular operations. Now, if I say I have a consumer, let's just visualize it from the consumer's perspective. I have a consumer over here, and this particular consumer says that I would like to develop some sort of a Fiori application. Okay, they'll need an OData service. They'll need the data from n number of tables I would have. Okay, so I would have n number of tables and n number of views and XYZ thing. In order for me to reach over here, in order for me to reach till my, let's just say, projection view layer, the data modeling is quite important. And why it is called data modeling? I can simply call, I would have called it as a CDS view creation, isn't it? Why I'm calling it as a data modeling? There is a reason behind that. Okay. Each of this particular table, I could have exposed by the name call, let's just say EKQ, I can call it as a ZEKQ underscore V, like we used to have in ABAP dictionary. And I can say ZEKPO underscore V. I can do that, right? I can easily, let's just say, name anything arbitrary over here and that can work. But that's not how the data modeling fact works. Okay. Data modeling says simply, data modeling says that each of the CDS view has some significance. Okay, and this significance is defined by the let's just say term called data modeling. Okay, let's just talk about those significance. So for example, if I say that I am going to define some sort of a view which is going to okay, now let's just say I would like to reach till this Fiori application from here to here. I would like to reach from here to here. Okay, now what I'll need, do I need a raw data of my table? Not really, right? I would need some process data. So for example, if I say my database table of EKKO has stored some sort of a single line of record over here, which would be nothing but your, let's just say PO number, which will be nothing but my PO number 1 plus, let's just say they would have some sort of a supplier called S01, plus there would be some company code C01, plus there will be some person, the creator of this particular document as well would be there. Okay, I'll just say U01. Okay, I'll just take a simple example saying this U01, and I want that this U01 is nothing but a technical user ID. I don't want a user ID. Instead, I would need some sort of a name of the person. Simple as that. Okay. Now, if I directly write a select query on my table, will it give me that particular person's name? No, right? I might have other tables onto which I might have to be dependent some user master data in order for me to convert this user, technical user, into a user name of the person, right? And that's the reason we need some middle ground onto which I can prepare the data, or I can say technically I can transform the data into the form in which my user would like to interact with it. Because technicality is technicality is going to be the truth for my backend data, but for my end user that might not make much sense, right? That's the reason. So when I say I would like to transform the data and convert it into the form which my user would like to interact with, we have to go by a certain steps. Okay, so let's just understand few things quite let's just say uh, as a base concept called VDM, virtual data model, and how it will help us with any sort of such data modularization, data conversion. Okay, I'll just simply go over here and I'll see. Okay. Now there are different kind of views. VDM covers different kind of views. What we can call it as a interface views. Is one kind of interface view. Okay, and another kind of view is called consumption view. Okay, when I say interface view, the name is quite simple, right? It says purpose of this is to create an interface from DB table. So I'll be reading the data from my database table and I'll be converting it into something, and finally that can be consumed on my consumption view layer. That's the idea. Now, when I am creating such an interface view, I might be reading a single DB table. Single DB table can be my data source, or there can be more than one DB table which can be my data source, or there can be one DB table plus certain views which can be my data source. Okay, so in that case, what we'll do is we'll divide my interface views also into two more categories called basic views and composite views. So the idea is, if my database table over here, that's the only one which is going to be the data source for that, a single DP table, or many a time let's just say more than one as well. But the idea is it contains a single type of. So if I say I'm reading a header kind of a data, a single type of DB table, or let's just say some sort of a text table that I would like to query on and convert, or I can say wrap them up into a view, I'll call it as a basic view. Afterward, I'll combine n number of such views so that my data is getting transformed. So for example, I'll read the data from EKKO plus I'll read the data. Okay, I'll just read the data from EKKO and I'll just name it. Okay, so interface view has got a convention called, in terms of let's just say customer development, we ideally call it as a Z, some business process. So for example, let's just say MM_I and some sort of a name. Okay, so for example, I'll just call it as a EKQ. So I'll just say basic view over here whose name will be ZMM_I_EKQ plus the user master table. I'll just say ZMM_I_ for example user master. So I'll just say USR03 for example. Let me call it as. Now this particular basic views which I created, I might opt to combine those, okay, into a view which again will be a view which is a combination of a data. Okay, so which will have the data which is getting combined from both this particular cases. Okay, and this finally gives me some sort of a data which ultimately will be having the data transform in the form which I want. Okay, so for example, I'll just say ZMMI underscore purchase order. Okay, so it is an interface views for my purchase order, which is a composite of type because it has multiple data sources from where it is deriving the data. This all the data views that you see over here. The one fact over here is it's not specific to the application which I am developing, right? For example, tomorrow I am willing to get the data from my EKQ. I can simply go ahead and reuse the same view. So interface views by nature are quite reusable. Okay, are reusable. We are developing this, for example, because we don't have any existing view. But once we have that, going forward, we'll utilize this view. So we'll make it as generic as we can. Okay, and we'll ensure that the same can be utilized at n number of places. So I have a basic view and composite view whose name is underscore I frame the basis of an interface views. So going forward, my consumption layer over here will not directly interact with my table, rather they'll going forward interact with my view. So they don't want to understand EKKO, they don't want to understand USR03, they can simply understand purchase order data. Now this purchase order data can be a transform form as well. One kind of view, okay. Other than that, there is something called wrap layer. Okay, wrap layer, or I can say wrap views, you would see them in the form of something called R views. Specifically in the term of a VDM concept, specifically when it comes to specifically in the terms of a wrap definition, you will see this particular thing coming up. Okay, now what is the purpose of R view? Because now it added one more layer to it: interface views, R view, and the consumption view. Consumption view, we'll call it as a C view. So in terms, we'll simply say in terminology, we'll have some sort of a I views over here. We have some R views and we have some C views. Okay, I'll just mute all of us for some time. In case you have any doubt, you can unmute. Okay. Now, once we have I view, the purpose is quite clear. Purpose is to interface. Now, R view and C view, as I mentioned, these are reusable, but here I'll just specify these are application specific. Okay, my R view and C view are quite application specific, or let me just also call it as in other term, it's a wrap service specific. Okay, so these are quite wrap service specific, application specific views, which are of two type, and both are not optional, both are required for any application to be worked. First layer of view that you will create will be your R view. Okay, R view, or I can say wrap view, that's something that you will create. The data source for this view will be, I'll just say it will consume your I view and ultimately build the basis of business object. That's what it will do. Okay, so it will have, let's just say, select star from my ZMMI purchase order, and it will consume the build basis for your business object. Okay, and there will be consumption view, which will be it says it's consume. I'll just say in this particular consumption view, it is a projection on our view. It is a projection on our view, which will be finally exposed via your service definition and binding, and at end of the day consume, and I can say and finally consume by your Fury application. This is what it means. Now, when I say I view, maybe it seems it's quite clear to everyone. When it comes to R view, I'll say it will consume the I view. So for example, I'll say a purchase order is there. Consider there is one more view we created called ZMM. ZMM underscore I purchase order item. Okay, now as I mentioned, these two views are quite irrelated to each other. Matlab, if I say they are technically related to each other, but when it comes to the signature of this, you won't find any similarities or you won't find any linkage between both of them. They are quite independent. Okay. But now when it comes to R view, you will ultimately ensure that these are related. That's the reason I'll say you will consume the I view, but now you will define a business object. So how a business object is defined, that's also defined in the terms of R view and C view. Okay. And that's where the terminology come over here. And this particular terminology, I'll just simply. And that particular terminology that we are talking about over here is this one. So when it comes to business object, okay. Now we are talking about specifically R view and C view because we mentioned business object. Okay. We are talking about a business object. So for example, let's just consider a simple scenario. If I say purchase order, I'm creating an application managed purchase order. Okay. Now in my managed purchase order application, I'm creating a view ZMM underscore R underscore purchase order. If I create another view ZMM underscore R underscore, then in that case, this particular purchase order and the purchase order item, what is the relationship between them? This will be my parent, correct? And this will be my child of it, correct? So it means they are linked with each other in the form of a parent and child, right? A business object is ideally a way of giving the linkage, giving the relationship between a different kind of a data. What is a parent? What is a child? What is a root? Okay. Now let's just say there is a parent for items and there is a child for PO header. Now let's just consider one more thing. So for example, I have one more thing ZMM purchase order item, and let's just say some sort of a funding. I'm doing because purchase order item will also need a funding. I am saying 1,000 laptop I would like to order. Who would fund for that, right? So that's called funding. So which is per item. So I'll just say it is child for my PO item. Correct. Now, as you are saying, this child for my PO item, what is the relationship of this funding and purchase order? These are root of the data, root of the business object. So when I say this particular node over here, is going to be child for this, is going to be child for this. Same goes over here. This is going to be a child for this one as well. It means in the terms of a business object, the purpose of this view is a root. So if I just say in my PO application, the header data over here is going to be a root view. Then my item data over here is going to be a child, which is nothing but a normal view entity. Okay, so I'll just call it as a root view entity. And when it comes to my purchase order funding, this is going to be again my child item for my items purchase order item, but again it is going to be a view entity. So in any application, this is how the relationship should be established. Now, for example, my purchase order has also got one more child called over here called partner who are going to process it. For example, the supplier, let's just say the person who is going to do the shipping of it, XYZ number of persons, right? So this is also going to be view entity. So it means in my this business object, there is a header, there is an item, and there is a partner. Now these two are on the same hierarchy level. These two are onto the same level from the terms of business object because parent of both is header. But this header does not have a parent. It's always going to be one. This is called root. Each wrap application will have one dedicated root on your R view and the C view both. Okay, and that's the reason it forms the basis of your business object. It says that, okay, how the data is related to each other. Now, this information you won't find on your interface views. Okay, getting my point. That's the reason I specifically mentioned that these are rep specific view. Now, why did I mention that? Because if I say that this is ultimately going to be application specific, then only it makes sense. So consider a scenario where I am talking about another application where I have let's just say a scenario where mm, okay, let's just say okay, let's just say I'm creating one more application. Let's just say which call as a budgeting. Okay, and in this budgeting application, I would have some sort of a centralized cost center. And this cost center would be funding to n number of requests, out of which let's just say there can be 1,000 purchase orders. So if I'm creating such an application, then in that case, the center, the root of the data is going to be what? It's going to be some cost center entities. But when it comes to the child of it, it's going to be purchase order. But a root entity cannot be a child of anything. Okay, root is always going to be root. It's a topmost, it's a parentmost entity. That's the reason when you define any ref specific object, these are quite application specific. This cannot be reused. But when it comes to interface views, these are quite reusable. They are quite generic. So this application for budgeting that you might be defining, might be creating, they might be able to reuse the interface views of EKKO purchase order item, but they won't be able to reuse this ZMMR purchase order because this is application specific. Getting my point? This is how it works. This is the terminology. This is how the relationship is established. So now if you just go over here and say that I would like to define some sort of a relationship over here in the term of data model, all we are doing is we are creating some sort of an interface views for the table. So they are not directly consumed. Once it has been defined on an I layer, on the R view layer, on the rep view layer, we'll establish the relationship between them. What is a parent? What is a child? What is a root? What is a business object linkage between them? That's how we define. And that's the term, that's the reason it is called as a data modeling and not just the CDS, plain CDS views. Okay, then we'll be projecting it and then we'll be ultimately going forward. I hope it makes sense. Anyone having any doubt on any of the VDM concept that we have covered so far? Yeah, I mean, because of some thing, maybe we are not able to see those things. I can say work on this thing practically, but it also gave us a time so that we understand the terms bit in deeper compared to when we just start jumping onto. So now we can directly jump onto the such a relationship creation where you will be able to visualize these things clearly happening. Make sense? Yes.
Yeah,
No?
Sumit, I have a question here.
Yeah, Vijay, please.
So our views, I mean, they only depend on iViews, or we can create additional views in our view. I mean, as a our view. Let's say budgeting example. Here we have purchase orders, we have cost centers. The purchase order, for purchase orders, I can use the business object purchase order. So can I create my own view for cost center in this
Yeah,
R wrap layer?
yeah, you can create your own view. Okay, that's fine. Now, for example, in case of this one as well, for example, funding. Now, funding is also going to be one of the information which will be linked to your cost center. So over here, you see it as a child, but over here in your budgeting application, you see it as a parent. So definitely this cost center will anyway have some sort of an interface views which will be reading the data for your cost centers, right? So those cost centers, those funding information, it will be reading from somewhere. So you will have your own set of views, but those own set of views you will always create in the form of an interface views. The moment you have all those interface views and everything transform data ready, you will start consuming it in the form of an application, and there you can consume only the views which are made application specific. So your data source is anyway going to be iView. So this purchase order application can be consuming, or I can say might be consuming some view which you would have created specifically for cost center, but there should be an interface view. If there are view or C view, then definitely you cannot do that. That's, I mean, you can technically do that. On some layer you will be pushing it, but when you go ahead and check the VDM concept, the virtual data model, the data model that you would have prepared will be wrong, and at one point or another it will hit you back. So the idea is you can have n number of views uh, created in the terms of an interface views which can be consumed in any different application, be it uh, let's just say purchase order application, budgeting application, or 1,000 other applications as well. That's totally okay, fine. That's perfectly fine. It could be possible while defining, you just define this as a business scope, you developed and deployed that. Tomorrow, budgeting applications request started. You started working on budgeting application. Okay, you created n number of I views for cost centers and everything. Now that application also got deployed. Now customer is realizing that, hey, if my purchase order has got something called cost center, why can't I show the reverse way around? In the purchase order application, I could also show the centralized cost center which is funding it, and I can give those information so my end user is able to correlate easily, right? So they'll say, hey, can you show the information per purchase order in the relevant purchase order application for the relevant cost center from where the cost is being derived? You will say yes, but for that, while you are developing that, by that point in time, the cost center IView and everything would have been created into the system, isn't it? So rather than creating those new, what you will do is you will start consuming that. You will start consuming those views. But while consuming, will you consume your IView, RView, or CView? I'll say you will always consume your IView, interface views. That's what you will consume. And that's the reason interface views are not direct select query on the basis or on the database table, right? It's also composite view. It means you are not simply triggering a select query, rather you are transforming the data. There can be a number of joins, there can be a number of associations, there can be a number of case statement conditions, there can be a number of things which ultimately bring my eye view in a state that it hasn't got the transformed data, and that transformed data you can view in consume in any application. Make sense?
Okay, which means it's always a three-step process. I mean,
Yeah,
we must create
in RAP application, it's always a three-step process. Many a time you might see people skipping the first step process, but the idea, or I can say the thing that they'll miss on to is they'll always end up creating n number of views again and again for same database entity whenever it's needed for the second time, right? Because in that case, this won't be reusable. And then in that case, definitely they might not be able to reuse this, and if they want it for any other application, then they are going to duplicate the database object that they might end up creating. That's the reason it's always three-step process you should use. But whenever you are developing it for the very first time, you will scan if there is something already existing. If that's there, you won't create, rather you will consume. If that's not there, then only you will add one more database object onto the system. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, then anyone has any other doubt, any questions?
Yes, Amit.
Yeah, yeah.
You said the screen again. So
Yeah.
while explaining, you told that in the second number composite view, you told there is no relationship between these purchase order and purchase order item composite
You
views.
can create an association, but as per the standard definition of a view, you ideally are requested to keep your interface view as generalized as possible. Okay, so in any application who is just willing to get the data of purchase order, they can simply get this. If you would like to link this item over here, you can add it in the form of an association, and don't add it in the form of a join. So tomorrow, let's just say if there is some application who is willing to just get the data of header, their application does not trigger a join on the item even though they don't need it, isn't it? So the idea is purpose of VDM. That's the reason why. What is a VDM call ideally? If you would have heard, maybe I guess if you have used, you would be knowing it's called virtual data model. And what is it? A virtual data model is a concept. Okay, it's a concept, and it's a best practice which is ideally followed whenever an application is being developed. It's a design guideline in a way. Okay, so yeah, many a time the best practice and design guideline you might see anyone overruling or changing. That's okay, but as per the best practice, you should keep the views as generalized as possible so they can be reused. So I'm just speaking in the term of what is the most generalized and what is the best practice that we can follow, but you can have the relationship between both of them. But while you are establishing a relationship, the suggestion which ideally VDM concept gives you is don't add a join, instead add an association. Okay, add an association and just expose that association. So tomorrow, if someone would like to get those data, purchase order data, correct, so they can easily use those data and get header and item both at the same point in time. Okay. Okay, then
Sumit,
yeah,
yeah, Sumit,
yeah,
I
okay.
have one question. maybe a basic one. So
Yeah,
we have DDIC views, data dictionary
yeah,
views, and we have the
correct.
CDS. So what's the difference?
It's a there is a big difference between both of them. Okay, I'll tell you what. Um, so first, a foremost difference between DDIC views, which has with CDS view, is that your DDIC view are not cloud compatible. Okay, that's a basic one. And your CDS views are, that's the future. Another one is when it comes to DDIC view, what you ideally do. You can have some dictionary view, maintenance view, and n number of such views. So I can say dictionary view, maintenance view, help view, projection view, right? You can have those views which are called as a DDIC views. I'm just typing it in a short. Now in the CDS views, okay, let's just consider what ideally you do in DDIC view. You ideally, let's just say, have n number of data sources, establish some sort of a join condition, some sort of a filter clause, and you ultimately you ultimately say there is a DDIC view which I have created. Now, if I would like to use it somewhere, I might write a select query on that. I might use in a report or a module pool. But tell me one thing, can I use this DDIC view if I would like to create a Fiori application? I can consume this in a OData service and then expose. But if can I expose this view directly so that my Fiori application go ahead and consume this directly? Not really, that's not possible. But when it comes to CDS view, it comes up with bunch of capabilities called, let's just say, some sort of annotation libraries. Okay, it comes up with bunch of annotation libraries. Okay, and other than that, maybe it comes up with some sort of a capability which is also under annotation libraries. I can say which will help you give the UI semantic for that. I can say some sort of a give UI enrichment for that. Okay, other than that, so this comes on the annotation library, which ultimately helps you enrich the capability of it. On top of it, there is something called security perspective, security aspect. For example, in the DDIC view, if I say I have created a view which gives me the data of purchase order, I would like to ensure that if I am using it, so for example, if user 1 is using that, they should only be able to see the data of company code 1. If user 2 is using that, he should only be able to view the data of company code 2. Why? Because I am belonging to a entity of that particular organization which is dealing only with company code 1. This should not be visible to me and vice versa. Can I apply this security? No. But your CDS view does not only contain this particular thing, which is called DDL. Yes, all this view over here are meant for DDL, data definition. Rather than that, I can say on top of it, your CDS view also come up with something called security aspect called DCL, called access control. Not only it gives you the capability of direct exposure, which can be consumed by Fiori, not only it gives you the liberty of triggering a lazy join, which is also not possible in your normal DDIC view. It also gives you the security so that you can define if 1,000 users are using that, which user should view which set of data based on his or her roles, or I can say the authorization that he or she is carrying. That's something which is kept possible in CDS view and not into the DDIC. Make sense?
Okay, whenever you say direct exposure of a view, which means
Direct exposure of a view is, for example, if I'm creating a simple CDS view, I mean the way which is anyway getting obsolete now, I can say which is already obsolete, is if I'm creating a CDS view, for example, Z underscore I underscore EKQ, and I'm creating a one DDIC view. So this is my CDS. Now this is my let's just say DDIC view. Here I'm saying Z EKQ underscore V. Now I would like to create a Fiori application, a simple Fiori application, nothing complex, saying it should show me the data of purchase order, a company code, and maybe supplier. And I have created a view just which will just pick the those three columns itself. So I have defined that. Now, in order for me to reach from here to here, what is the complexity? In CDS view, what you will do is you will just simply say that expose this either by creating a service definition and binding, or simply you will say add an annotation at the rate odata.publish. Done. The moment you odata.publish, it will generate an endpoint. My Fiori guy can consume it and generate an application. For your DDIC, what you will do is you will create a gateway service by by creating a gateway project. Then it will have a get entity or get entity set that you will define. Okay, then you will handle all the different number of filters, because if someone says, hey, I would like to filter it based on a company code, will it be done automatically? Not really. For that, you ultimately have to write all those filtering, sorting, all those logic again over here, publish this, then only it will be used. So there can be n number of there can be development effort, kind of tangible development effort involved over here, which won't be the case over here. The moment you write a select query, easily published, easily consumed at any point you want. And this is also in the thing which is also was introduced maybe years back. The initial version of CDS was capable of doing this. Now this RAP and other CDS capabilities which has been exposed these days are quite more powerful compared to your DDQs. Okay. So forget about Fiori, right? If I say I would like to consume it in any third-party application as well, I would like to just generate an endpoint, a simple SICF service, and use that. This might need a good amount of effort compared to the CDS views. And the security is anyway a question over here, which may not be the case over here.
Okay. One more question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
So in BTP, we already have a business application studio where we can develop the application. Now we are installing Eclipse. I mean, in real time, which one we use, Eclipse or BAS?
Both. Okay, I'll tell you what. So idea is your ADT is called ABAP development tool. Correct. It means your ADT is just for a ABAP development. Now, are all the application developed based on ABAP? I can say technically you might say yes, but not 100%. In your BAS, you can use it for any sort of a Fiori or UI5 development, which you cannot use ADT for. Plus, other than RAP that we are going to develop over here, CAP is something which does not need ABAP. That's also BAS is used for those sort of development as well. Only restriction is BAS does not understand ABAP, and that's the reason they are proposing us to use ADT. BAS is made kind of in a way that's more of an extension of your Visual Studio code. And that particular VS code understand your JavaScript, Node.js, anything which is relevant, more linked to those open source technology compared to ADT, which compared to ABAP, which is not an open source technology. Okay, so that's the reason we are forced to use ADT compared to BAS, because this does not understand your ABAP and RAP needs ABAP. Okay. So whenever, in this, by the end of this particular training, we will be whatever RAP service that we are going to develop, we are going to consume it in the Fiori application and deploy it. Now, while we are going to create a Fiori application, we will be using BAS for that. Business Application Studio will be the SDK that we'll be using for creating those Fiori applications.
Okay, then where do we write the business logic? Let's say I'm developing a Fiori application. I use it
based on the RAP layer.
Again,
always your business logic should be on your backend, or I can say server side. That server side is built out of your ABAP. So your ADT is the tool with which you will write, and your RAP is the application. In your ABAP or RAP, you will write the business logic, and in BS, you will create your Fiori application. These client side, these server side.
Okay, which means we need to use both whenever we are developing the Fiori application. The front end we go with the BS, and the business logic we write in.
Correct. Perfect.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, then maybe I guess it's 10:30. I guess it's first day. I guess it was a bit of a theory, quite a bit of a theory, I can say. I don't want to like overload you guys with that, but I guess there is a base concept we definitely will need going forward in the session. So maybe we'll call it a day in case you guys don't have any question. We'll see each other at the same time on Saturday and Sunday going forward. Okay. Okay, then if you all are clear, maybe we'll call it a day. We'll see each other next Saturday then. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Sumit, could you send us the recording so that we can go through it?